Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about emergency applications in the Supreme Court. This will be a week to watch them very carefully, the last week before the election. Most cases so far have gone against Republican efforts to constrict the vote, the franchise, and you will have Republicans making emergency applications to the Supreme Court. And if the court deigns to take the case and enter an order staying whatever happened below, you'll have these rules go into effect as a practical matter for the election. So that's going to be it'll be the last battleground where things can change on a dime. Okay, we have a few already. The court has issued its orders list, and there's nothing that it took that matters. So we want to be looking at the emergency applications docket, and we have one this morning from Virginia officials. And that is in the case where the court barred them from using this program that Glenn Youngkin, the governor, put in place in August, ostensibly to remove suspected non-citizens from the state's voting rolls. So the district court said, no, you got to restore the registration of these 600 people whom you've taken off the roll. And then the Court of Appeals refused the state's request to step in. So now it's only the Supreme Court, and they filed a motion for emergency relief. All right, just to put this into the context of what has been an overall thrust by Republicans to use as a spear the allegation that appears to be basically false, that there are non-citizens out there voting to generally restrict the franchise. This is Virginia's version of it. So the governor issues an executive order and says, state officials, you need to use data from the Department of Motor Vehicles to identify and cancel the voter registration of people whose information isn't also duplicated or replicated in the DMV records. It's very well known that if that's the case, far more likely that they just haven't done everything in the DMV than that they are non-citizens. And the federal court, in fact, found that the database canceled the registration of some eligible citizens. Those voters were unaware that they were no longer able to vote. And the Department of Justice, actually, this is one of the remaining weapons after the Supreme Court has, in many ways, neutralized or weakened the Voting Rights Act. But there is this 1993 National Voter Registration Act that basically says states can't systematically remove ineligible voters within 90 days of a federal election. So that's what this was based on. The district court said you're removing folks, and it's a mess and it's chaotic, and that's exactly what the law was meant to prevent. And the Court of Appeals lets it stand as is, and now they're in the Supreme Court, as you know, within the last few hours. So we watch it closely because that's a situation in which 5 members of the court can just, by granting a stay or without explanation, totally, again, flip the cards and have the 1,600 voters no longer eligible to vote. And at that point, it's probably too late to do anything about it, not to mention it's the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court typically would then hear the case, decide. But if they use that emergency docket to just freeze things and reverse what the district court has done, that, as a practical matter, would be a game, set, match for this election. Okay, so that's the thing to be watching now. I don't think it will happen, but it's the most likely kind of Supreme Court intervention. They have a few other emergency motions up there, a couple from RFK, Robert Kennedy Jr., who is saying, take my name off the ballot. It will confuse people. Remember, he went through all those gyrations with different states, was able to get his name off the ballot in many places, but not in all. Those are emergency motions. There is an opinion from the Fifth Circuit, which basically invalidated Mississippi's law, saying you can count ballots that are postmarked by Election Day but come in a few days after, but that doesn't seem as if it will apply to this election. So anyway, Virginia right now is the main action spot for the Supreme Court emergency application docket, but that's going to be a docket that we want to watch really carefully because it could result in pivotal action that just reverses what to date has been, by and large, rejections of Republican efforts to constrain the vote. So they'll be moving in the Supreme Court, and we'll see whether the Supreme Court in this emergency basis lets itself get in the muck of these final days and a razor-thin election where anything that they do, at least in a swing state, could turn out to be pivotal. Of course, that hasn't stopped them in the past. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.